Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Phil and I'm a senior lecturer in astrophysics at the University of Lincoln. Now I've done lots of videos that talk about different types of exoplanets, planets, planet formation, same again with moons. But one thing I haven't really discussed is the fact that moons can only exist a certain distance away from the planet that they orbit. So moons, if you're not familiar, have to orbit planets. If they don't orbit a planet, then they're not a moon, they'll either be a dwarf planet or a planet themselves. So there is a kind of range in which a moon can exist on a stable orbit around a particular planet. And it has a minimum and a maximum limit to that. And we're going to cover what those are and basically have a look at that, I suppose. So, first thing to point out, as I just mentioned, moons orbit planets. They're gravitationally bound to the planet, so they should be on like a bound orbit. So they're not just, you know, orbiting the star, they're orbiting the planet, and we're going to assume they're kind of long-term stable as well. So min and max. So the moon has to orbit somewhere between the minimum distance to the planet and the maximum distance from the planet. And there's two bits of physics that are going to kind of define those boundaries. And it does depend on the size or the mass of the star, the mass of the planet. How far away the planet is away from its star as well can also affect where the moon is going to be orbiting, where it can exist basically. So the minimum distance, the closest it can get to a planet, is called the Roche limit. So that's the minimum distance it can be. But if it's inside that, then it will no longer be a moon. It can't exist on a stable orbit. Why is that? Well, the Roche limit is the closest a smaller celestial body, so like a moon orbiting a planet, can get to its larger one before the tidal forces will tear it apart. So if a moon, even a planet to its star actually, if it gets too close, then it gets tidally pulled apart. So those tides become so strong that the internal kind of strength of the object is not able to hold itself together and it gets kind of stretched, pulled apart, and it's essentially destroyed. So that's your inner limit, is your Roche limit, and it depends on the material that the object's made from. Something that's a bit more fluid is more easily deformed. Something that's less dense is more easily deformed. Something dense, you can get it a bit closer to the planet. So here's the equation if you kind of wanted to work this out. This is how we might determine it, and also it gives you an idea of how it might change with regards to the planet parameters and also the moon. So there's two versions of this. In fact, there's a few different versions. You can use density, you can use mass. I've got the density version here, but this is also the solid, rigid object. So the moon would be rigid in this particular approximation, but you can do a fluid one as well, which is slightly different. So the Roche limit D here is equal to approximately 1.26 times the radius of the planet. So a bigger planet is going to have a larger Roche limit. So essentially the moon can't get as close. And then what we do is we times that by the cube root of the planet density over the moon density. So again, if you've got a high low density planet, same again with the moon, that's going to alter where this Roche limit is and how far it can actually get to the planet before it's tidally pulled apart. So for an example, like a real world example, Saturn's rings, the outer edge of that pretty much sits at the Roche limit for water ice, because the rings are predominantly made from water ice, and the Roche limit sits approximately there. Now if it was a rocky material, then it would have a higher density probably, and you'd be able to get a little bit closer. So you could actually have a moon inside the rings, which we do have actually. So approximately the edge of Saturn's rings, if any of that ring material goes beyond the Roche limit, so further out, it can actually then form into a moon, because the gravitational tides force is not going to prevent any gravitational collapse. And actually we do see that. A lot of Saturn's moons have actually been formed because the ring has spread beyond the Roche limit. I've got a separate video explaining how that actually happens, but once it's gone beyond the Roche limit, it can then undergo like gravitational instabilities and it can kind of collapse and grow into a moon. Now, on the opposite side, the maximum distance that a moon can get from its planet is called the Hill radius, or the Hill sphere, or the sphere of influence, and that's the maximum we can get away. Now, what does that actually represent? Well, the Hill sphere, it's the Hill sphere, let's say, of a moon anyway, is the furthest away that it can get before the gravitational domination of the planet ends. If that makes any sense. So if we've got a planet orbiting a star, if you move that moon further out from the planet, then the star will start to dominate the gravitational attraction of the moon instead of the planet. So it's kind of like a boundary between where the planet is dominant gravitationally and the star is gravitationally dominant instead. So it's that kind of limit there. It's where the two forces kind of essentially balance each other out. So the moon has to have an orbit inside the Hill sphere. It can't exist outside. If it's outside, then it will be on an unstable orbit, it won't be bound, and it would likely end up orbiting the star and not the planet, because the star would dominate its orbit at that point, or its dynamics. So here's the equation for the Hill sphere, same again with the Roche limit. It also depends this time round on the distance between the two objects. So I've got Earth and the moon here, our example. Now A is your semi-major axis, so that's basically the orbital radius. We've then got little m, or lowercase m, which is the mass of the smaller object, the moon, and then we've got the uppercase m, which is your mass of the larger object. So in this case here, it would be the planet or Earth. So we can see straight away that if we get further away from the planet, or sorry, I should say, if we get further away from the larger object, we have a larger Hill sphere. If we have a larger mass of the smaller object, we have a larger Hill sphere. If we have a larger mass of the actual planet, then we'd have a smaller one. I think the example I've given here is the Hill sphere around the moon, so it's a little bit different to what I was just talking about. But basically, the smaller object, if you had a larger mass, then yeah, you're basically going to decrease the Hill sphere. So smaller second mass means smaller Hill sphere. Again, it doesn't have the same, it has a lower gravitational attraction compared to the larger object, so it has to be closer to it. If the second mass is larger, that means we get a larger Hill sphere. Or I should go back actually. So smaller second mass, smaller Hill sphere. Larger second mass, larger Hill sphere. Smaller Hill sphere, large fill. Hopefully I've kind of got that the wrong way around, the right way around, even not the wrong way around. So the Hill sphere will also shrink as the distance decreases as well. So we get closer together. The larger object's going to have a greater gravitational attraction, and we can't then have an orbit so far away from the smaller object. Now, to be stable, it actually needs to be well within the Hill sphere. So it can't just be at the edge of the Hill sphere, because it can still experience perturbations which can destabilize it because it's kind of on the boundary. So it needs to be quite within the Hill sphere. Now, typically for a prograde orbit, which means it's orbiting the same way that the planet is rotating, you ideally want it to be, half the Hill sphere. So quite a way in. If it's retrograde, we can get a little bit further out, and I can cover a separate video on this, but basically retrograde orbits that go the wrong way round compared to the rotation of the planet can be more stable further out, and it's just down to the way that the perturbations work and the direction and speed that it kind of passes by those actual the directions where the perturbations are occurring. So it depends on what direction it's going, but you do need to have it quite inside the Hill sphere to be stable. So thank you for watching. If you find the video interesting or helpful, then do consider becoming a member of the channel. There's extra videos in the member section, but it also helps support the channel. So thank you for watching.